Collective nouns, more than just a group of words. Today, we'll learn about some confusing but funny words. Collective nouns. These refer to a collection of things or people. Instead of saying a group of birds, we can say a flock of birds. Saying a group of lions is fine, but a pride of lions provides a better image. Collective nouns have been used for centuries. During the 15th century, a book called The Book of St. Albans was written. It lists over 160 collective nouns for animals and people. Even nuns had their own collective noun. A superfluity. That's because some people at that time thought more than one or two nuns were too many. Collective nouns later developed into the ones we learn today. Some are quite funny, such as a shiver of sharks. Even though many of these collective nouns were just made up for fun, some are still in use. It's impressive to think about how these tricky words can provide a window into the past.
Hi everyone and welcome to English for You. I'm Pat.
And I'm Elsie.
So Elsie, have you ever seen a flock of sheep? Or a school of fish? Those fish study hard, I can tell you.
I've seen sheep and I've seen fish, but what do you mean by a school of fish or a flock of sheep?
Well, maybe we can answer those questions by looking through today's article on collective nouns. So let's see how it begins. It starts by saying, today we'll learn about some confusing but funny words. Collective nouns. So something that is confusing, it's hard to understand. It's not 100% clear. When you look at it, you will be like, what's this again? Hang on, I need to read this again. I just don't get it at all. So these words, you think, a fish, a school of fish, they're not studying, they're not lining up, they're not wearing uniforms. How come it's a school? Maybe you don't understand. That's because it's a bit confusing. Here's an example sentence. The teacher tried to explain the math lesson, but it was still too confusing for us. We didn't understand it.
Confusing 这个形容词啊，就是令人混乱的或是令人困惑的。那我们也可以说 puzzling。P-U-Z-Z-L-I-N-G 那如果你要形容自己感到困惑，你要用的是 confused， 也就是把它变成 ed 结尾的，或者是 puzzled 也可以。So here we're talking about collective nouns. Collect 这个动词它是收集，那你在字尾加上 I-V-E 变成 collective 它就是一个形容词，代表集体的，所以 collective nouns 指的就是集合名词。
So what is a collective noun? That's the whole point of this article. Well, we see in the sentence, these collective nouns refer to a collection of things or people. So it's a group. It's many of them all together in one place.
Refer to something 代表的是描述或是意指 So they can be things, people, or animals, such as a group of birds, right?
Yeah, we can definitely use a group of birds. And in fact, the article points out, instead of saying a group of birds, we can say a flock of birds. And that's the whole point of these collective nouns. It's not just saying like a group or there's a load of birds over there. It's using one special word that's usually associated with this animal. Like we wouldn't say a pride of birds or a flock of lions. It's kind of like this one word is mainly used for these things. Flock of sheep, flock of birds, but not flock of fish. It's a school. Now in that sentence we had the phrase instead of, which is to have or choose one thing instead of another. You might say, let's order Uber Eats instead of cooking tonight. And as I said, the word flock, this is a group name for birds. It's a group name for sheep. And you could also use it as a group name for people. And it's generally a group that lives, feeds, travels together, or are kept together. Here's an example sentence. A flock of young people showed up at the night market as soon as the schools closed.
我们说到呢，不同的动物会有不同的集合名词。那 flock 这个名词啊，它代表的是禽类的一群，或者是绵羊、山羊的一群。所以呢 ，a flock of something 好，指的就是一群的某种动物。像是我们说到的 a flock of birds 一群的鸟类 ，a flock of geese 一群的鹅也可以哦，用这个字。那还有像是 a flock of goats 一群的山羊 ，a flock of sheep 一群的绵羊，好，也是它。
Okay, here's another example. The article says, saying a group of lions is fine, but a pride of lions provides a better image. So this is what these collective nouns do. They create more of an exciting, interesting image. An image is a picture, but in this case, we mean a picture that is created in your mind, either by the words that people speak or the words that you write on a page. You could also have images created by the music that you hear. You just imagine something. Ah, that's the image. Someone says to you, Hawaii. The image you have is maybe beautiful beaches, waves, people in brightly coloured shirts, that kind of thing. You might say, for example, the poet is good at creating images with colour words and similar things. So the idea here is, yeah, group of lions, no problem. But what are lions? They're the kings of the animal kingdom. That's what people say.
They're very proud.
Yeah, the males have got this big load of hair that kind of they shake out and roar, and they're like the boss of all the other animals. So pride, okay, they're proud. A pride of lions, it just kind of fits.
对啊，我们说 pride 这个字呢，这个名词其实是 proud 这个字来的哈。proud 是骄傲的，好，那 pride 的意思也是一样，只不过它是个名词，所以用来代表狮子跟他们的意象很符合。那意象这个字呢，就是 image。那你在想象的时候，你的头脑当中会出现一个意象，想象的动词呢，就是由它变过来的，叫做 imagine。那想象力呢，就是 imagination。那如果你是一个充满想象力的人，可以用 imaginative 来形容你。
So the article continues, and we look at the history, or some of the history of these words. It says, collective nouns have been used for centuries. We then see in the article, during the 15th century, a book called The Book of St. Albans was written. St. Albans is a town in England. It's named St. Alba, was an important saint in the UK, and there's a town named after him, St. Albans, and this is where this book was written.
Oh, so a lot of collective nouns are from this book.
I guess, yeah, maybe somebody decided, well, let's find all the images that poets have used or the words that people use in their conversation. Let's collect them all together and make a book. And we see in the article, it lists over 160 collective nouns for animals and people. Now, the interesting thing about some of these words is, some of them are just fairly ordinary, but some of them do give you an idea of what people were thinking. And we see this in the next example, which says, even nuns had their own collective noun, a superfluity.
Oh.
Yeah, we'll explain that in just a moment. We better look at the word nun first. So nuns are Christian women, especially Catholic. They're mostly Catholic Christians, so the ones who follow the Pope as the leader, that kind of thing. And they are women in a religious order, and they promise to follow certain rules, like not spending money, not owning things, following certain diet rules. And they're often teachers, and they usually live together with other nuns. Buddhists can, of course, have nuns too. So you might say, for example, Kate went to a religious school and many of her teachers were nuns.
Nun 好，可以解释为修女，或者是呢，在佛教当中可以解释为尼姑。那这边刚刚讲到的这个字 superfluity， 它代表的是过量多余。So why did they choose this word for nuns? Because there were too many?
That would be my guess. I mean, the article says that's because some people at that time thought more than one or two nuns were too many. So you might think, well, why is that? It's a long story, but at that time in history, a lot of people were not so happy with monks and nuns and that particular church, and they were trying to move away because they didn't think all the monks and nuns really followed the rules, and they thought they cost a lot of money. So maybe, one or two nuns is okay, but too many, too much. So the article then continues by saying, collective nouns later developed into the ones we learn today. And these are the ones you might learn in class. You might have a little section in your textbook that says, here are some interesting group names for animals. That's where you'll learn the flock of sheep, the pride of lions, pack of wolves, all of those kinds of things. Now, some are just fairly normal, but as the article points out, some are quite funny, such as a shiver of sharks. And the article continues and says, even though many of these collective nouns were just made up for fun, some are still in use. And this phrasal verb to make up just means to create, to invent. We often use it with stories, poems, songs, and in this case, words and phrases. Shakespeare made up many words, phrases, and idioms that we still use today. The article then says, it's impressive to think about how these tricky words can provide a window into the past. So something that's impressive is really cool. Something that makes you go, oh, wow. Or it makes you feel interested and that something is of good quality. You might say, for example, that movie was really impressive. I can't think of anything wrong with it.
Impressive 这个形容词呢是令人印象深刻的，那它的动词呢是 impress, I-M-P-R-E-S-S。那还有另外一个形容词呢，可以去形容你是对某件事或是某个人感到印象深刻。那个形容词呢，你要把它改成 ed 结尾的，也就是 impressed。那它的搭配介系词呢是 with 或是 by。好，所以你可以说 be impressed with 或是 be impressed by。WH 疑问词所引导的间接问句，那 WH 疑问词呢可以形成直接问句，句型就是很简单的 WH 疑问词开头加上助动词或是 be 动词加上主词，所以像是呢一个简单的问句可以是 How can these tricky words provide a window into the past？ 好，这是课文里面的句子，这些棘手的字如何成为过去的写照？但当 WH 疑问句并入另外一个直述句或是 yes/no 问句的主要子句时， WH 疑问句的结构呢会因而改变，主词与动词位置对调，成为间接问句，又称为 WH 名词子句。那间接问句呢，常置于表示询问、告知、知道等意思的动词之后，像是有 know、有 ask、有 wonder、tell、sure 这些字等等的。好，那句型就会是呢，主词加上动词加上 WH 疑问词，再接上主词，然后才接上动词哦。那包含了助动词或是 be 动词或是一般动词，然后再接续写下面的内容。那间接问句呢，常常用于提问者想要表达比较委婉、客气的语气的时候。所以像是呢，一个直接的问句是 What are you going to do this afternoon？ 你今天下午要做什么啊？放进间接问句可以是 Let me know what you are going to do this afternoon。 好，让我知道你今天下午要做什么。那如果间接问句当中的 WH 疑问词是主词的时候，那结构就会变成 WH 疑问词加上动词，也就是包含我们的助动词、be 动词或是一般动词。所以像是这样的例句里面就是这样的结构哦。His mom wanted to find out who had broken the windows。 他妈妈想要找出是谁打破窗户的。
So in that sentence, we said it was impressive how these tricky words can give us a view of the past. So something that's tricky, it gives a sort of tricky, a deceptive idea of something. It gives you an idea, but it's not really true. And you think, I think this looks easy, but in fact it's hard. It seems simple, but it really isn't. If you think of like a recipe you're cooking, you think, oh, this looks easy, and then you actually try it and you go, whoa, this is actually really difficult. Somebody says like, oh, making a cake, it's really easy, and then you go, no, it isn't. You've got to get so many things right in order to make a good cake. The recipe is a bit tricky. Here's another example. The test looked simple, but in fact, it was really tricky. Many students got a low score.
Tricky 这个形容词呢是复杂的、棘手的，所以其实也可以说是 complicated， 或者是 difficult， 或者是 hard。
So that sentence is saying that, yeah, these words are hard. You maybe don't understand why do we say this word for this group of animals, but this other word for another group of animals. It's kind of difficult for you to learn all of these. So they're a bit tricky, but if you think about it, they do give you an idea of either how people thought in the past, like about the nuns, or how people think about a particular animal, like the Pride of Lions one. So that's the end of our article. Let's now go to our For You chat question, which is, think of some modern things like smartphones or social media. What collective nouns would you give them?
Interesting. I probably would give pool to smartphones.
A pool?
A pool of smartphones.
Okay. A bleeping of smartphones?
A bleeping?
Yeah, a bleeping. A bleeping is
What
a
does
noun.
that word mean?
Bleep, like they bleep, they make a noise.
Oh.
What else could you? Social media.
Social media.
Yeah, social media is full of negative stuff. A negativity of social media, or maybe a negativity of social media comments.
A cloud of social media?
Oh, that's a good. Oh, a cloud of, yeah, I like that.
Yeah, it kind of creates the image, right?
Yeah, because it works with like stuff being on the cloud. That's a really cool one. What else is a modern kind of thing? A rain of vaccines.
A rain of vaccines.
Yeah. Okay. Or if you're going to use the different spelling and definition of reign, a reign of pandemics. Reign meaning to rule. Like, so the pandemics rule over everybody.
Oh, that reign.
Yeah, that kind of reign, like a queen reigns over a kingdom. So that's
Understood.
Some kind of modern stuff like that. You could have fun with it, and I encourage people do have fun with it, because having fun with words is what got a lot of these words and collective nouns invented in the first place. So if you're writing, you want to be creative, like Elsie did with the cloud thing of social media, just go ahead and do it, and maybe that phrase will stick, and it will become part of the language. Go ahead and try. But that's all we've got time for. Thanks very much for listening. For English For You, I'm Pat.
I'm Elsie.
And we'll see you again soon. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Vocabulary Review. Confusing. Mark spent a whole day on the confusing puzzle, but he still wasn't able to complete it. Flock. When the farmer called, the flock of sheep quickly followed him, as they knew it was feeding time. Image. Vicky has an exact image of her dream vacation in her head. Nun. During our visit to the church, we saw a group of nuns praying together for peace. Impressive. Ancient people built a huge and impressive temple here and covered it in gold. Tricky. Jack thought the puzzle was really tricky because it required good math skills, which he doesn't have.
智慧小补帖
Collective. Refer to something. Superfluity.
以上节目是由活用空中美语制作，活用空中美语杂志，请洽询全国各大书店。如欲索取试听教材，请来电02-2364-4000 02-2364-4000，或上网查询，网址是 www.english4u.net www.english4u.net